Dear Carol, we are greeting you in the framework of our project, City as a Classroom. I prepare a few questions because you are greatest photographer and did a huge work in this field. So the first question is, as an American photographer who documents the living history and environment of our times, you visited every state in the United States and donated more than 100,000 pictures, royalty-free, to the Library of Congress. Carol, in your opinion, what is the difference between older cities and newest one?
Well, let me say this, there aren't really many new cities in America. Now, they're not as old as cities in Russia and Europe and China. And by the way, I've been to all of those places many times to Europe, and then all over to the Soviet Union, including Siberia and China, and way out in China. So I've seen a lot in my life. So I know what I'm looking at when I visit American cities, and I've traveled American cities really all of my life. And I'm doing this project I'm doing has been going on. I'm in my 40th year, and I've been to all of the United States, all of the states, all of them. But really there aren't, I'm just really trying to think if there are any new cities, very few, if any. Mainly what's happened is our cities during the 80s, 70s and 80s were kind of a little bit, some of them anyway, falling apart, including Washington, D.C. I started my career on Pennsylvania Avenue between the White House and the Capitol. And it was completely in shambles. And so were a lot of our cities. Now, as I travel throughout the United States, there are many that are renewed and kind of, some are still falling apart, some of the smaller ones, but many cities are reinventing themselves so that people will come downtown even, maybe putting in parks, doing things that will attract visitors. I was in a city the other day in Kentucky. Kentucky is known for bourbon, horses, and bluegrass. Well, the city had put in a bluegrass museum about 2 years ago, and that's attracting a lot of visitors. So cities are looking at themselves and saying to themselves, what can I do to bring in, you know, obviously right now it's a tough time. People aren't traveling that much, and it's tough all over the world, and I get that. But this bluegrass museum had attracted a lot of visitors. So I guess what I'm saying is it's a reinvention of the American cities that has awakened America, if I want to say that. And as I said, also, I'm going on my 40th year, and many, I have been through all the states. Many of the states I've been through many times. So if I'm traveling from Washington, D.C., where I live, to Colorado, I'm going through various states and going back and forth through those states. To go all the way across the United States from Washington, D.C. to California is 3,000 miles. My husband and I, he travels with me, put in about 40,000 miles across America and back many times during a year. So you can see we've put in a lot of miles. But so what is new America? What is a version of new America? It's probably old America that's been refreshed.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's really interesting. My second question exactly about this project. Are you still working on the photography project for the US Congress? I understand, yes? So
I am doing that.
Are there any cities and places that have not yet been included to the collection, but are in your plan?
Okay, so again, I say I've been to all the states, but, and I've been working on this for 40 years, but in 2010, I started doing a project that more thoroughly looked into the states. So instead of just whizzing through and taking a few images, I'm actually stopping and saying, okay, and I just finished, by the way, Kentucky. Okay, what is this state known for? Where can I go to get a vast look at it? So Kentucky is everything from the Appalachian Mountains to the Bourbon Trail, to the horses, so it has so many different aspects. I just worked in Arizona. Again, the Grand Canyon, Phoenix, Tucson, all of these places have a varied look at America, which is obviously vast. So as I go into each state, yes, I'm still working on the state project, started very thoroughly in 2010. I have been funded to go into many states and do them thoroughly. I have about 17 states left to really do thoroughly. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that I will be funded to go into about 6 more starting in the fall if I'm not stopped because of the pandemic. So I plan to be home for a couple of months. And by the way, my home is located about 20 minutes from the Washington, D.C. Capitol and the Library of Congress. So I'm right on the verge of Washington, D.C. As I said, very, very close. So, we're not home very often. We're usually out traveling across the United States. So the other thing that's interesting about what I'm doing is that I am working mainly on the highest resolution camera on Earth, which is the phase 1 151 megapixel camera. And I've been working in phase 1 for quite a while. I use various cameras, but this is amazing. And about 6 months ago, this 151 megapixel camera came out, and I'm still in awe. I look at the images and say, whoa, did I just take that? Incredible. So that's my gift to this project. I bought that. Because I think it's that important, because of course we're sitting on the edge of technology, but the most important thing about this project is, yes, you can have these images, they're copyright free, they're downloadable to anybody in the world, but the most important thing is that they are for the ages. So I want these images to be sharp and amazing 500 years from now, because I wanted to stay on the edge of my technology now, so that when people download them or look at them or whatever, now film, close to going away, yes it is. Digital probably will go away too at some point. The important thing about the Library of Congress is a few things. One, it's the largest library in the world. Number 2, it is considered the most historic photographic collection on Earth. Number 3, my project is featured in the 21 digital collections and the featured 21 digital collections at the Library of Congress. I'm the only living person. So it is important for me to grab a hold of this and to make it so that as I said, years and years and years from now, people can look at these and be able to study them. What do my glasses look like? What does this globe look like? What is the environment I'm in? To be able to go in on the images and not have them just disappear on you. Okay, there are billions of people taking cell phone images every day, and I'm thrilled for that, because at least they're getting images. But these are very teeny. And if you blow them up to 8 by 10, I'm not sure they work very well. Now that will also change. And that would be good, because how neat it is to be somewhere as anyone and be able to capture it. I'm a great proponent of visual study. Now, I'm in the same collection as Dorothea Lange. She did the American Depression. There are words that were said about that Depression that Dorothea Lange's images show a different version. Her image, Migrant Mother, is the most downloaded image in the Library of Congress. Wow, wow. To even be close to Dorothea Lange is amazing. Although, a little bit, right now I'm having a Dorothea Lange moment, aren't I? I mean, hello, everybody's wearing a mask and we're going through hell and back. So that, you know, I'm traveling. I have to, I'm going to. I went down to the Black Lives Matter protests. I went to the Women's March. All of these things that are happening in my hometown, Washington, D.C. So I feel it is important for me to capture what America looks like right now. And our American cities and states are a wonderful way to do that. Oftentimes, I was just in a small town the other day, and oftentimes I go through small towns. When I look at a small town, I'm looking at a lot of historic buildings that might have been there right when they started. And how fascinating is that? So, and I love small towns. America is really made of a lot of small towns, other than our major cities, New York and Chicago and Washington, D.C., and so on and so forth. We're just, you know, filled to the brim with small towns. That's great. And I'm also interested in the average Joe on the street, the average American. What do you look like? What are your thoughts? How do you feel about your country? It's a very interesting time in America.
Exactly my next question about the locations. You already a little bit spoke about this. So yeah. How do you choose locations for shooting? What do you like photographing the most? And why did you start photographing architecture?
Very interesting questions. I don't basically mainly choose the cities, funding does. So if I get funding to photograph a certain place, that's where I head. And so hopefully in the fall, I'll have 6 cities funded and I'll go. Just had Kentucky funded and I went. So that is one thing. And so that drives the train quite a bit. So architecture, that's a very, very interesting question. So I started my career in a place called the Willard Hotel, which is 1 block from the White House. It was, in 1900, a 5-star hotel. Gorgeous, 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 gorgeous. When I went into the Willard Hotel in 1980, it was like a nuclear bomb had hit it. 1 block from the White House, remember. This was our America. Pennsylvania Avenue. It sits right on Pennsylvania Avenue. Just a few blocks from the Capitol, 1 block from the White House. And it was like a nuclear bomb had hit it. This is America's Main Street. Whoa. So I started teaching myself photography there. I was working actually in broadcasting at the time, so I taught myself photography in the Willard Hotel. And it was fascinating to me because, so I actually was going to school, photography school at night, and I brought in a friend of mine to pose in this wreck of a hotel. Well, in the meanwhile, somebody else went with me and took an architectural photograph. And I thought, whoa, that's interesting. And I started shooting things without people in them, especially in this hotel, which turned out to be kind of a, you know, architectural photography, but mainly of dust and dirt and did damage. And I was fascinated by it, absolutely fascinated. And at that point, I started working first in the Hasselblad, and then I moved on up to a 4x5 architectural camera. And I just loved it. There was just something about architecture, especially in a very damaged hotel like that nobody was in, just me and the rats. That was it. That I found very fascinating. and learning how to light interiors. And I don't know, there was a lot of things I taught myself that was just incredible. And black and white and what that brings to the, you know, map. It was fascinating. So I kind of started billing myself as an architectural photographer, and there were no women in it. I was kind of it. The other woman who did very well with architectural photography, especially industrial, was Margaret Bork-White. And I started to look at her work. Well, one day in the Willard, this man came by with a bunch of black and white prints in his hands. And I said, what are they? And he said, this is the only way we know to put the Willard back together again. This woman photographer in 1901 came in here and took these images, and there are no architectural drawings. And that's what we're using to put the place back together again. And they're down at the Library of Congress. So he took me down there. I looked at her work, which was incredible. Andrew Carnegie had sent her down to the South to do the antebellum mansions. And she had worked all over the South, Virginia and North Carolina and Louisiana, and then finally lived in New Orleans. I said, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I think people at the Library of Congress, I met the staff, they looked at me like I was completely out of my mind. I said, right, you're going to do what she did. And she's like the cornerstone of the collection, 15 million images in the collection. But her images that she took right around 1900, all the way up to around 1940, are invaluable. Talk about being able to look at what we were in comparison to what we are now. So oftentimes I will look at her images before I go to a state to see what she did. So when I went to the South, I thought, oh, that's what I'll do. I'll look at Francis Benjamin Johnston's images, and I'll go to all those antebellum mansions and I'll re-photograph them. How about not there? Many of them have been taken down or just fallen apart or whatever. Very few are left. And if that didn't teach me a lesson, I don't know what did. So what are we? What are we now? And what will we be 200 or 300 years from now? I don't know. Berenice Abbott. I'm sure as I use these names, some of you will know who these people are. Worked in New York City. And she took this photograph of this man coming out of a barber shop, a newsstand, man coming out of barber shop, all sorts of things, all sorts of information. What was on those magazines? What was written on the windows of the barber shop? What he had as an outfit? Cars around. I don't think cars were in it, but anyway. I love that image. I could study it for hours because of the detail. And I'm sure she thought when she took the shot, well, this is just normal. Well, it was, but it isn't now. And it teaches me that what I'm photographing may seem normal at the time, but probably not down the road. Will our small towns all make it? I don't know. I've certainly been in small towns that have been closed as closed can be. Some of our protests, I was in a town the other day, a very large town in Kentucky, completely boarded up because of the protests. Washington, D.C. was boarded up for a while. They took them down quickly, but when I went down there, boards almost everywhere. Art, murals on the wall. Oh my Lord, what can we learn? So I guess what I'm saying is, so architecture to me is still an important part of my collection. I do people as often as I can, but architecture really kind of spells it out, doesn't it? I mean, let's put it this way. If I'm in Europe and I do an architectural photograph, I know I'm in Europe. If I'm in America and I do one, no question I'm in America. No question about it. So I think architecture tells a lot about us. And especially in small towns where a lot of the buildings, as I said, and large cities, neighborhoods and so on, where the buildings were there in the very beginning. And they're still there, only maybe they're different, you know, or surrounded by skyscrapers or, you know, like in New York or whatever. But it tells a tale, and that's what I'm trying to do. And also the fact that I understand architecture. I understand how to shoot it. I know how to do interiors. This camera, where I used to have to spend hours doing an interior, will allow me to go in and take a photograph with windows certainly majorly in the photograph. And the Capture One software that I use allows me to tone down those windows and brighten up the interior so it almost looks like I lit it. What I want it to look like is what my eye saw. That's the important piece, because if I tell you the truth, then you'll see the truth for the ages. 2 or 3, 400, 500 years from now. Did I answer all of your questions there?
Yes, maybe, do you have maybe some criteria how you choose locations for shooting? For example,
okay, well, again, I think I started with that, and that is choose location on funding. So let's put it this way. Just finished Kentucky. Okay, so when I go into the state, which has been somewhat determined by funding, I want to do it thoroughly. So I will, the library is even helping me with this now, and that is, let's do all the districts. Let's go in and really make sure you spread out across the state. So there's, you don't want to do every shot, you know, you can't be there for years. Although in Colorado and Wyoming, they wanted all the seasons. So I went over 2 years of time. So that was important too. So I get the major towns, I get the medium-sized towns, some of them. I get the small towns, but they're a vast variety. So you can really see what the state looks like. So you're not questioning, well, does every place in Kentucky have bourbon? But you've got to go into the bourbon. You've got to look at the bourbon. You have to look at the horses, because Kentucky's horses. So you look at these places, but you also need to go into the other towns, even if they don't maybe have exactly what you think Kentucky's known for. And the same with Arizona, and the same with all of these states I've been in. So it's showing you a vast look at what is Kentucky? What is it? When I was in Arizona, are you ready for this? So Arizona, you think of the desert, you think of the Grand Canyon, you think of the cities, Phoenix, Tucson. Did you ever know that it has the largest pine forest? No, I think on Earth. I didn't know that, but you got to show that. So you find out what's important and what's unique. Maybe you didn't know also Route 66. So I've traveled America, for 100 years. Well, maybe not, maybe 99 years. So when I was a kid, my family used to travel all the time. And when I looked out the window, I saw a version of Route 66. Yes, I did. So when I saw Route 66 in Wyoming and Arizona, I went nuts. I thought, oh, this is what I saw when I was a child. And I just love it. And it's going to be gone. Oh, yes, it is. But that's why it needs to be recorded. That's why it needs to be where you can look years from now. I tell little children when they're with their grandparents or parents, I say, when you're 90 years old, you'll be able to look at this image on the Library of Congress, and you'll be able to download it and see what you looked like when you were little, because none of the other photographs that were taken of you will probably exist.
Thank you so much. Dear Carol, what do you think is the difference in the logic of two people? One of them understands this world through the camera lens and another never takes a camera in his hands.
Well, you know, we probably are both similar because in a way, you know, we're traveling through life and looking at everything and traveling, period, across the world or not, even in America. And we're recording these in our brain, you know, so now I'm recording them. The great thing is when I get home, I can look at it again. Yay. And I can share it with the world. So, you know, are we above the people that just are viewing it and recording it in their brains and that's it? That's what they take home? I don't know, maybe they're spending more time thinking about it because I'm more interested in capturing it. So I don't really compare myself to that. I think I have a task and my task is to show it off. Sometimes not, sometimes just show the mess of it. But so I'm recording it for the world to see. They're recording it in their minds for them to maybe dream about and think about. So I don't know that there's really a comparison between the two of us. They may be more aware of it at the moment than I am because I'm more aware of the fact that I want to take this good image and what the lighting is and where the sun is or not. But the difference is obviously that I can carry it home.
Thank you so much.
Share it.
Yes. Also, one more question. One photo can tell more than 1,000 words. As a photographer, what do you want to convey people through your photography?
Okay, so this is America, folks. This is what it looks like. In 2000, over the last 40 years, this is what America has looked like. That alone is a fascinating look. There are probably many thousands of words that could be said about that. Now remember, it's not about me. I'm just a cog in the wheel. It is about us. It's about America. What does it look like? How does it feel? What's happened to it? I remember we just went through, obviously, some really bad, you know, protests, and I was down in DC during some of those. But I also remember when Martin Luther King died. I had actually, and that was a long time ago, come to Washington and watched it burn. And that was part of what happened to the Willard Hotel. It was a 5-star hotel, and it burned all around it, right near the White House. Nobody was in Washington, D.C. They were scared to death of it. Can you imagine that? It was a 5-star hotel at one point. So I guess what I'm saying is the words are what are going to be spoken over time. I don't think my collection is really going to be valued until maybe 50 to 100 years from now. At that point, people will look at it and say, whoa, that's what America looked like during that time. And that's okay, because I believe it was Dorothea Lange or maybe Margaret Worth White even said those words, that you're really not appreciated. But it's not, as I said, I don't care if I'm appreciated. It's not about me. It's that I'm being very careful to show you what I see on the highest realm cameras I have. And there are many, many, many words that could be said about all of those images. And that's the key. That is the key. But to be able to visually show our country there are no words really to describe that and the value of it. It's incredibly important that we do. Everywhere we go, both Europe and, you know, the Soviet Union, and everything's changing and has changed. I remember when I went to Moscow, there were 2 boxes in the GUM department store. and they had flies flying around them. That was it. That was what I saw in Moscow. Moscow was closed. Can you imagine it? Now I understand it's, I haven't been there since, but I understand it's pretty high end. Wow.
Carol, I know that you took photos of Twin Towers 2 months before the tragedy, and they were one of the important symbols of the United States. In your opinion, what is the role of symbols in the architecture in cities and how they influence people?
Well, it's interesting because here we were looking at New York with these Twin Towers, thinking they would be there forever. And I was doing a book on New York for Random House, and I got to the Twin Towers and I said, oh my Lord, I can't get it all in. I need to go away from it. So I hired a helicopter and went up, flew around New York, never thinking a moment about what I was doing, just saying, okay, I got to get this. 2 months later, it was gone. I think it made me realize the importance of what I was doing, number one. But also, so that was a statement. That was New York with a lot of, you know, high-rise buildings and iconic buildings. The Twin Towers had been there for years and years and years. As a matter of fact, when they were first built, they weren't even really appreciated. They are now. Architecture tells us a lot. And in order to, and that's why I concentrate on it so much, because it tells us so much about us. And why does America look so different than Europe? Not always. There are times that I've been into places that, the Library of Congress, for instance, I would swear I was in Europe, you know, and especially inside. When I started working with the Library of Congress, I spent 2 years photographing the Thomas Jefferson building and then donated the work to them. It had really never been done. Whoa. But because I've been to Europe and Russia and China, I get the importance of what we look like and how different we are. And that to me really says it all. But also the fact that things that I'm photographing can change, disappear, or disappear because they've been built around whatever that was. There's probably things in New York that you can't see anymore because there's buildings around it. Or, you know, or it's changed, who knows why. Or we could go through hard times or a war and lose structures. So I believe that architecture tells a tale. And luckily, I can understand that tale because I've been overseas and know that America is, in a lot of ways, has its own look. And so does Europe, and so does Russia, and so does China. When I went to China, no cars, hardly, just bikes.
Wow.
That's changed.
Thank you so much, Carol.